Hey, this is Jody Porter, and you're listening to WALF.
Welcome to another episode of Left of the Dial on 89.7 WALF. I'm your host, John Laprade, and on today's show, my guest is guitarist, singer-songwriter, solo artist, multi-instrumentalist, and producer, Jody Porter. Jody may be best known for his work with Grammy-nominated power pop favorites Fountains of Wayne. But Jody has an impressive career of his own outside of his time with the Stacy's Mom hitmakers. Jody Porter, a.k.a. JoPo, is widely regarded as a trailblazer of the shoegaze music movement of the 90s with his band the Belltower. As a highly coveted session guitarist, he has made records with such artists as Albert Hammond Jr., Jesse Malin, Ivy, Juliana Hatfied, and the recent Monkees album. Jody has also made 3 solo albums of atmospheric and catchy original music. His first album, Close to the Sun, then Month of Mondays, and the upcoming Pacifier. A rock and roll triple threat, Jody is a versatile guitarist with chops and swagger, a uniquely Brit-pop songwriting approach, and a singular vocal style. I spoke with Jody recently by phone, post-soundcheck and pre-show during his tour promoting the soon-to-be-released Pacifier. We talked about recording, songwriting, touring band personnel, the unfortunate rumors around the permanent hiatus of Fountains of Wayne, his work on the latest Monkees record, and of course his many vintage guitars.
Hey, dude, I was just about to text you back.
Oh, hey man, how you doing?
Pretty much expert timing. We just finished sound check.
Well, great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. And
Sure, man. Lay it on me.
Love the record.
Good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, man. Can you tell me a little bit about the recording process and who you recorded it with? Like, I know on your previous record, Month of Mondays, you played like pretty much every instrument on it. Is that what happened with this?
Yeah. I borrowed a few drummers along the way, but I played everything else.
That's a lot of work and a lot of time, like tracking all those instruments.
I ended up playing on 4 or 5 songs, drums on this thing, just because no one else was around.
Ah.
My drummer in Fountains of Wayne, Brian Young, also played on the first 2 cuts. So I got a few people involved in this, and it feels pretty good. Feels like a band.
Who are the other members?
Right now, we just got out of sound check. There's a female bass player called Joan Chu, and she played with me and the guitar player Pete Hogan, who are both New Yorkers. And we did Month of Mondays, like a residency at the Bowery, you know, like 3 or 4 years ago. I can't believe how long it's been and how much time flies. But so the reunited kind of thing, this will be our first show. And then I brought Cobb in. He's a multi-instrumentalist, so he's playing drums in this project.
Well, it sounds great, and it's called Pacifier. I also love the cover, by the way.
Oh, good. I kind of did that myself.
Oh, really? It's so cool.
A little Photoshop action. I
Yeah.
found a hornet that stung me and took a photograph of him and made him famous.
Is there any significance to the title Pacifier?
Well, I think the thing kind of turned into more or less of like a novel in a way. Because the first song was the last song I wrote, and it was called In the Beginning. And I said, well, it's got to be in the beginning, ... And then the record takes off and then ends with the last chapter. So the Pacifier reference is really just like, you know, from the minute you're born until you die, you're going to get stung a lot of times.
assuming the first single that you're putting out is Valerie Sometimes, or at least that's the...
It is, yeah. It's a giveaway one.
One of the things I love about Valerie Sometimes is that it kind of has a trippy vibe, but it's also like a very catchy pop song at the same time.
Skirting up the back streets like Mary Kwan, couldn't buy a four-star restaurant.
I love the line, skirting up the back streets like Mary Kwan. I had to look it up. She's like a 60s miniskirt pioneer, is that right?
Yeah, she is like Carnaby Street queen, you know, it's kind of Twiggy era in the swinging 60s, and she's allegedly responsible for inventing the miniskirt, so I had to reference her.
Valerie, sometimes revelations hard to find.
Well, it definitely started, it was more of an experiment at first. I just came up with the riff. I think I was trying to show like my goddaughter that GarageBand was really easy to use. And like, you can do this on this thing and then take it into a real studio and then make it into a record. That's how I demoed it, and then we tracked over those parts in the same tempo and just, you know, I deleted the GarageBand files and replaced them with better sounding real instruments and real amps instead of canned models. So I'm old school with new engineering tactics.
Right, although those canned models, when you're trying to mess with a sound or get a vibe going for a song, they're helpful, right?
Yeah, it's totally like, you know, it's replaceable. There's only one time where it was irreplaceable because I got this really clean tone on the third song on the record. And then we went in and we put it through a tube amp and everything, and it just didn't have the same kind of dancey vibe, you know,
right. Super
clean. And so we ended up using it, but 9 times out of 10 we'll go with the real amps and stuff, you know.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because, you know, I just got your record last night, and so I was listening to it and making notes and stuff, and one of the things I wrote was, I love the guitar sound on It's When You Were Mine, right? That's one you were just talking about?
Yeah.
I love the sound on it.
The clean guitar is definitely processed. It went through Logic, so it's not a real amp and a real cabinet. The rest of it is, but it's just got that clean, kind of Cure type, fancy sound, you know. We ended up going with that track over the others that we'd done after to try and replace it.
We're rolling numbers, baby, getting off the grind, 100 miles per hour, honey, and we lost time. Way late in Vegas, wheels off the ground, took a couple of days before we got found. You can't go back in time to back when you were mine.
I'm glad you said The Cure because I also wrote, as a note here for When You Were Mine, I wrote, like, somehow reminds me of the 80s, but then I didn't want to suggest that to you because that's not generally a popular thing to say to somebody, that it reminds you of the 80s. But
well, if you're talking about the Pretenders and a handful of other, you know, like Joe Jackson and stuff, all those guitars are really clean, you know?
Yeah.
And me being kind of a 60s enthusiast and a purist, you know, it didn't take me my years long to say, all right, this is going to be the track, you know,
right? Rather
than, you know, up against a Marshall or a Box or whatever else was around. Right. It just sounded better. It sounded more authentic. And yeah, I agree. It does have that kind of 80s sound, but, you know, I always loved the Pretenders, and that was when I was at my most impressionable. So, you know, Smiths, Johnny Marr, that kind of stuff.
You're making the 80s proud listing all those people.
Just that one song. The rest of them are, you know, definitely in a different vein.
Hey, so something you said made me think of another thing I wanted to ask you. You said you generally have a 60s vibe. What was it like working on the Monkees stuff?
Oh, well, it was personally fulfilling because my first single that I ever had was "I'm a Believer," and with I think at the back with "Last Train to Clarksville" 45. I used to spin it when I was like 2 or 3 years old on my little toy record player. You know, it's kind of nostalgic to me. And meeting the guys, they still work apparently the same way that they always did. They're never in the same room at the same time.
Huh.
So between me, Brian, Adam, I think Mike Viola was there a lot of the time. We were basically kind of laying down the groundwork, and then Peter would come in, or Mickey would come in, and Nesmith would come in. You know what I mean?
Chips and the dips and root beer, even though dark purple rain clouds are near. When you come around, you bring the summer.
This is one of the things I love about what you and Brian and Adam and Chris have been able to do, but you did it on the Monkees record, and you do it on your records too. You guys are chameleons when it comes to nailing a style. Like, for me, when I listen to any of the Fountains of Wayne records, when you guys are going for a 60s vibe, you nail it. And a 70s vibe, you nail it. And a lot of it are the sounds that you get and the way that you play. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how did you get to be that kind of a player and an artist?
Well, I'm a producer as well on my own work, but with Fountains, Adam primarily is behind the board when I'm doing a track, for instance. And, you know, the way we work together is really good when I'm going for a take or whatever. You know, he'll be in the control room and hear the best bits, and maybe we'll comp something, maybe it'll be a full solo. Like, but yeah, I mean, we brought a little bit of that into the Monkees. With, you listen to, what's the Andy Partridge song called? You Bring the Summer, I think it's called. The backwards thing at the end is me. The Monkees are in their own right, you know, whether they were formulated for TV or not, they're still a good sounding band, and we made a good sounding record with them, you know. Yeah.
No, I have the record, and I really do like it a lot. There are a lot of good songs on there, and you guys definitely nailed the style.
You know, the rumors that they don't get along, I just don't think they like to work together. It's dynamics of bands. I can say that safely with Fountains as well.
Right.
You know.
Right.
We don't necessarily all want to be in the same session at the same time. We kind of come and go.
Which I have to admit makes me a little bit sad. I always like to imagine my bands are all fast friends in the studio.
Sleeping on a planner at the Port Authority, waiting for my bus to come.
When you're working on music and you're spending a lot of time working out creative ideas, things can get sticky.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, it's always been really easy. Everybody puts in their 2 cents and puts on their own parts and stuff. But I guess the last couple records have been a little harder to get everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. First of all, we all 4 live in different states, and we're not really known for being prolific. We put a record out every 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I mean, the news on the street is that the band is defunct, but tomorrow never knows, as they say.
That's right, yeah. Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But until then, we have your music.
I'm happy with my stuff, though, as kind of off the cuff, you know what I mean? It's like, what you hear is what you get. That's how it went down. You know what I mean? It was like an actual moment in time. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to certain things, but to making records, I still want them to sound real. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sometimes I just like play through the worst amp in the studio and get the coolest lo-fi sound. This is everything that you hear on that record is how I wanted it to sound without somebody else's reputation being at stake.
If you were going to say, All right, these are the people that I feel like have influenced my songwriting. Who would that be?
Wow, it's so vast that you might ask me what kind of genres influence just as easily. But, I like all the British bands, the obvious ones, particularly the Stones. For me, the Beatles, obviously. And then I skipped to, like, the new wave kind of era. And in my teens, I started listening to what was au courant, like, Elvis Costello and Joe Jackson, Pretenders, stuff like that. And then I moved to New York when I was 19, so I got really familiar with the grittiness of the 70s scenes there with the, Richard Hell and stuff like that. So Ramones, all that CB movement,
Mm-hmm.
So it's all in there somewhere, I suppose, but there's a period where I was just like, that sounds too much like that, so I'll just throw it away. Now sometimes I kind of embrace, I'm like, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to make it even more like that,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I'm ripping anybody off yet.
You're capable of so many styles when you play. Who would you say are your influencers?
That's pretty easy. That's an easier question than the last one for me. I think my favorite guitar player out of his ability to be versatile is Jimmy Page. I don't think anybody's been able to touch him. You go from like Led Zeppelin 3, where it's just primarily acoustic, and then, the record before that, it's just like balls to the wall, riff rock. Guy could play, and the riffs he wrote. Same with Keith, Keiths are simpler, but Jimmy Page is probably the top of my list. But the thing is it's weird because I'm not a huge Zeppelin fan. I mean, I know it all, and I've been through many phases to where I listened to it for months on end, but there's something about Robert Plant that kind of bugs me out a little bit with all the baby, but, it's a bit like the Smiths in a way that Morrissey may get on your nerves, but Johnny Marr's playing is so good, you still got to spin it,
Yeah, I have the same issue with Zeppelin. I like them, but sometimes a little Robert Plant goes a long way for me, and it's more about his lyrics. It feels a little bit like J.R.R. Tolkien-y to me sometimes, where...
Yeah, lizards and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you're right.
Have so many guitars. There's a great picture of you that you have on your website of you like sitting by a tree, and you're surrounded by all of these guitars. If you had to pick your favorite guitar, which one?
I can answer that. It's the one I'm on tonight, which is something I really didn't break out very much during the Fountains era. It's a '63 Jazzmaster, which in my opinion is the best year for that, and it's the most versatile workhorse of a guitar that I have in my arsenal. It's pretty banged up now, but it still sounds great and plays awfully well. But different horses for courses, different strokes for different folks. Some songs like require a Les Paul or something with some humbuckers, but this Jazzmaster will be my guitar of choice for this new band.
Didn't you have like a guitar that was sort of custom made for you? I
got 2 or 3 of them actually. This guy Kurt Wilson in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and I came up with a concept of kind of building a Telecaster type thing because he had acquired a schoolhouse from like the 1700s or something like that, and he had all these pillars, so he's got this like 400-year wood, and it's what's that kind of wood called? Douglas fir.
Ah.
So I said, well, let's put a couple of humbuckers in there and see what that sounds like in a Bixby. And he made one for himself, and then I think he made me 2. And it's called the Beach Blaster. 3 humbuckers and a Bixby with a telly body, and it really has some cool tones to it.
Well, Jody, I've had a great time talking with you. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
Yeah, it's real easy. Good talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you.
John. Okay, bye.
Skirting up the back streets like Mary Kwan, couldn't buy for...
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jody Porter. Please check out jodyporter.com or at Jody Porter NYC at Twitter for latest tour info and the upcoming release date for the Pacifier album. I'm John Laprade. Thanks for listening to Left of the Dial on WALF 89.7 FM.